Posted time having arrived and a quorum of members present. I'll first thank you for attending our joint Finance Committee and Room Tax Commission meeting. Today is Thursday, July 16th, 2020. I will call the Finance Committee portion of this meeting to order and recognize that a quorum exists.
And I will do the same for our Room Tax Commission and note that we have a quorum as well.
Okay, thank you for that. We have a number of joint items. When we get to the end of item 7, the Finance Committee will adjourn. The Finance Committee then is excused, and the Room Tax Commission will continue and finish the rest of its agenda. The first order of business on our agenda is an overview of the room tax law. And this is, a joint meeting like this is certainly an efficient way to take care of our business because in one way or another, we both handle room tax, but it's good that we review some of the underlying principles. So I'll turn it over to Mary Ann, and she can walk us through that.
Sure, and I included a memo in the packet. In 2017, there were some pretty significant changes made to, significant changes made to the room tax law, and I've outlined those in my memo. The main one was the creation of a room tax commission, which could be done through a zone, or a single municipality could create their own room tax commission, which is what the city of Wausau elected to do. That they really took the control of the room tax revenue and put it into two separate buckets. So they basically said, because the city of Wausau was collecting room taxes prior to 1994, we were allowed to collect or retain the greater of 30% of the room tax, or the state law basically has you do a look back to a specific year. And so in 2020, that year is 2011. So if we look at what our collections retained were in 2011, it was the $431,973. So that gave us more to retain than the 30% calculation, which in 2019 was $292,000. And the city has always elected to maintain or retain its greatest amount possible. The commission, while the city can really use their room tax dollars for anything that they want to, the commission, based on the state statute, must use its allocated room tax for tourism promotion and tourism development. The commission and the city of Wausau entered into an agreement with the CVB, which is our tourism entity. And then the Tourism Commission also has a tourism grant program that it runs just for tourism grants, and that's how they have spent the balance of the money that is allocated to the Room Tax Commission. So in your packet, we have the results from 2019. And, as we collect, there's a delay in the collection process because while the city of Wausau collects monthly, the room tax, for example, the room tax for the month of May is not due until the end of June. So there's always a month lag. So when we're allocating room tax, we're always trying to while we try to predict conservatively that revenue, we don't know exactly what's going to be collected for that month delay. So each year we usually have a little bit left over from that last month of collection. I did present both the 2019 actual results and what has occurred so far in 2020. Typically, our room tax collections are stable and they provide, ample funds for both the city and our other obligations to share. The contract that we have with the CVB basically states that the city gets to collect its money first, and then anything over the $431,000 is we're obligated to pay the CVB. And that the flat percentage of room tax collected is 37.5%. So, with the Safer at Home, of course, we've experienced a major decline in our revenues. which has, us concerned. We did not make our first quarter payment to the CVB, which I don't believe the agreement actually specifies how we're supposed to pay our room tax. Oh, I guess the agreement does, but our ordinance does not. But if we had remitted payment, the amount that we would have owed the CVB was $73,111.87. So that's just a little background on the room tax law.
Okay, so just for clarification, after we have retained either the 30% or the percentage amount with the look back, whichever is larger, the 70% that remains is forwarded to the commission, correct?
Yes.
And the commission has then undertaken a contract with the CVB to forward 37.5% of its share. Right, okay. Just so that, we don't want to lead the public to believe that the 70% is going to the CVB.
Right.
That in 2016, when the commission was formed, and I guess first I have the luxury of the minutes, but second, I've been on the commission since day one. When that commission was formed in 2016, the city decided back then that it wanted a commission to maintain local control of those dollars and allow us some flexibility in the awarding of those grants. So in 2018, I believe we had made some adjustments to that contract, and at that time, the CVB was seeking an increase to the percentage that they enjoy from our share, which the Room Tax Commission was clear that it did not wish to increase. And at that time, the CVB then was told that any amount above their set allocation, they would be required to submit grant applications for and compete with everyone else. And so that's documented in the minutes of 11/6 of 18. And so just important to note that we've always held that percentage at the 37.5. So as I was preparing for the meeting tonight, those two things stuck out in my mind. Anything else? Does anyone have questions for Mary Ann about the specific room tax law or how we got to have a commission and retention? Or are we all fairly familiar with the workings of room tax?
I guess I'll start.
Okay.
Is there any intent to have a discussion of, is this the right way to keep moving forward? Because, I feel, as speaking from the Room Tax Commission side of things, we're left with a relatively small pot at the end, and does it really matter? It seems to be duplicative, and is there any intent to have a discussion about, there seems to be three streams here, and is that the right way to go forward on a continuing basis, or would it be, we're making a lot of the same groups apply twice for, different funding cycles, and does that continue to make sense? I know when we started on this journey, it was kind of coming in with some adopted things that were before, as well as taking the new legislation into account, and, is there a time for that discussion, and was there any intent to do that amongst the groups tonight?
Well, if I can just provide some clarification, and, looking at the 2019 room tax results, I think pretty clearly defines it. So back in the day, and I want to say this is, I didn't take a trip down memory lane, but, for basically as long as I've worked here and even prior, a number of nonprofits in the city have enjoyed a share of the room tax. And at some point, and I want to say it was maybe around 2008, maybe even earlier, we used to have all of the nonprofits apply kind of in an equal basis, where there was a lot of, red tape involved in the application. And at that point, finance committee members said, let's delineate our room tax recipients, and we're going to carve out a group that have typically brick and mortar obligations, like the Grand Theater, like the Performing Arts, or that's the same thing, like Leoki, and we're going to put them in a group called the Continuing Appropriation. And they have a very short application, and they can basically rely that they're going to get the same grant amount each year. And there's no relationship in that grant allocation to tourism. They don't have to show us that they're generating tourism or overnight nights, or overnight stays. And those today fall under the city's, I guess, bucket.
Okay.
Because
Yep.
the law says that the ones that go to the commission have to prove tourism. So that's really why we
Okay.
maintain that delineation.
So
and we
the
base
general
it-
thought is these are general quality of life improvement things that
Yes.
the city has agreed to
And
support.
while some of
right?
them may be able to prove that they generate tourism, they don't have to show that these specific dollars
Okay.
generate tourism.
Got
So
it.
the
Okay.
tourism applications, which today are $10,000 grants, they have to show that the grant is used to bring more people into
Okay.
the city of Wausau, or in staying overnight, generating overnight rooms, which they, the application was designed to accomplish that. They're submitting documentation of those efforts, and the maximum amount of the grant is $10,000. So that's basically why we have the two. And then the city, in addition to all of these nonprofits that we support, we give a certain amount just basically to the general fund, and we're also using it to help fund the 400 block and the riverfront, the parks efforts on the new riverfront park, some of those maintenance issues.
Okay.
Okay. I'd like to add, I guess, just a snippet from both sides, finance and from the Room Tax Commission, as a member of each. All along, I have seen value in the activity of the Room Tax Commission. First, the Room Tax Commission includes representation from the hotel operations industry, which brings us a well-rounded perspective. Many of us don't understand or operate in the realm that the lodging industry and the hospitality industry does. And so we need that insight. And so often, that representative on our commission has offered us something else to think about that has changed the way we think about allocations and the way we think about promotions. I'll also say that I like that the commission has a measure of accountability. And so, with the step-down theory, there is a point at which the city's allocation or retention will stop at a fixed point. That said, in a normal tourism year, the theory is that over time, the Room Tax Commission will have more and more and more of the money to allocate because the retained amount will be fixed at a point in time. And so while sometimes entities apply twice, the applications that they're submitting to the commission and that the vetting that they're getting in the commission is really ensuring that those activities are tourism-driven and that they are geared to generate additional room nights. That said, those who have been all along enjoying continuing appropriations have come to rely on those often for the use in their overhead. Not all, but some. And so the fact that we would go to a process or now have a process that steers more of that money toward an accountable commission where those allocations are generating room nights, more tourism, more people coming to this area to experience Wausau. That's the core intent of room tax all along. And I think the state law, we've discussed before that the state law changed originally because there were communities that were not doing this as well as we did. And so, we always, when we looked at room tax retentions, even in our finance allocations after the continuing appropriations, the things we fund from room tax are things that also support tourism and events. And our expenses to either put them on or conduct them. And so, or maintain the facilities that do. And so, we've been prudent in the way we've always managed room tax in the city of Wausau, that there are communities in the state that we're not. And so I think that, while we've been responsible, I can certainly understand why the law changed in the first place. But I do see value in two processes. And, I certainly would like to see us continue with the commission, and some of the things that we have before us tonight, down further on our agenda, I think will cement for us the fact that we have a commission is a very good thing. And, not only do we get some flexibility as far as what we provide grants to, but, there's also that measure of accountability. And when we discuss the applications every year, spring and fall, we look for new things. We look for events that we can get started, and then once they get up and running, they can support themselves, wean off, and we'd like to find new things that we can fund, new events that bring people to Wausau, and not fund the same cyclical events, even if they're popular, in perpetuity. So I would hope that our discussion tonight is not about, whether or not the commission should continue to exist, because I find it incredibly valuable. That's just my perspective.
I think by law, we have to have a commission. Either we have to have one singularly, or we have to join other communities to create one.
Now, does that conclude our overview on item 2? Are we ready to move to item 3? You kind of segued into your 2019 results, but item number 3 is discussion and possible action regarding presentation on the 2019 financial results. And now that we've done our spring and fall for that year, I guess, Marianne, if you want to just walk us through a recap of that year.
Sure. So our collections in room tax were $975,000, and that would be that's on an accrual basis. So it includes the months of 2019. And we had a carryover from 2018 of 41,000, so the total amount available was the 1,016,000. So of the components, we allocate them based on the law. So the city got to use the 462,000, with the balance going to the commission of 512. The CVB received 37.5% of the 975, which is the 365,826. The city's ordinance allows the hotels to retain a portion of their room tax to help offset administrative costs, as well as, I think, the comment on the hotels is that, so many of them are paid via credit cards, and then there's fees associated with that, and they pay that fee on the sales tax too, because it's part of the payment. So the city allowed them to retain a portion. At the same time that ordinance was changed, that we allowed them to retain a portion, we also went to monthly accounting. So it was kind of a give and take type of situation. So then, during the allocations in 2019, the Tourism Commission took applications, and the individuals listed were paid out. And on the city's column, we had our continuing appropriations, what was paid to the city general fund, what went to the 400 block, and what helped defray city park costs as far as riverfront maintenance. So at the end of the year, the city's ledger was overspent a little bit by 10,000. The commission had 87,000 left. So that's basically, we had a net amount of 76,000, and that then carries over to 2020.
Okay. Which it sounds like 2020 needs all the help it can get.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just have a question. I got an email this afternoon, and I know Melanie is on the phone.
Yeah.
Regarding the Grand Theater for their 2019 fall allocation that
Yes.
hadn't received?
They requested that in June.
Okay.
So we haven't processed it yet.
Okay.
Yep.
So that was something we did approve?
Yes, you
In the
approved it.
previous cycle?
Yes, they just submitted
Okay.
it in June.
So that will
Yeah.
be happening.
it's
We
in
don't
the
have
works.
to act
Yes.
on that?
Yep.
All right,
Okay.
there you go.
Excellent. Questions on 2019 from anyone in finance at all? Okay. If not, then item number 4 on our agenda is discussion and possible action regarding the 2020 room tax revenue collection predictions and the impact to the 2020 room tax budget.
Yep, as I said in my memo, there was concern in May regarding room tax. That would be when our first quarter was due. At that point, we were still in Safer at Home, and we saw, significant reductions in our room tax collections, I basically calculated what the break even would have to be so that the city could collect the necessary room tax that the city would be able to retain its share, and that's just shy of $560,000. So that would give enough money to pay the CVB their 37.5%. Of course, some of that would come out of that carryover from 2019. Even though we made all of our payments to the CVB in 2019, we would be using some of that carryover to pay their 2020 37.5%.
Sure.
So based on a $560,000 revenue, the city would be able to retain its portion, which would then, we would use to give to the general fund, to give to all of our continuing appropriation allocations. And the CVB would get their 37.5%. And then basically at that break even, there's nothing left for distribution. At the time that first quarter was being collected, and really even today at July 15th, we don't know what new normal looks like because the June isn't due until the end of July. So we saw dramatic decreases during that first quarter. I did look at, and of course, we don't really have access to occupancy rates. I did look at the parking activity because the Jefferson Street Inn, for example, uses parking in the downtown, and looked at some of the usage there. And, you know, it looks like June is slow to recover. We also have another factor that's going to affect our room tax collections, and that is that the plaza is closing down for renovations. So between those two, there is quite a bit of risk in room tax revenue collections for 2020 for the city. And so again, in May, I conferred with the city attorney and with the mayor as to what we should do. And because of the way the agreement is with the CVB, we delayed our first quarter payment.
Sure. I think that's wise, just so we can sort out what's all happening here. I mean, obviously, this is sort of an unprecedented situation, and you know, it requires some special attention. That said, I think even if, based on the revenue generated, if there is not funding this year for the commission to allocate or take grant applications for, you know, we certainly hope that many events that have canceled this year and tournaments that have canceled this year would certainly, once things start to turn around, look to schedule and apply with us for 2021. And I think it's important that we retain the commission and have it stand ready with members appointed so that when those applications come in, that the commission could resume its normal operation. You know, even if we don't have it to give this year, we don't have that spring and fall situation, we should certainly hope that next year we do, and we'd be right back to our normal running order, I guess. Any finance committee members have thoughts on 2020? It looks like at least doing it this way, we do have the ability to meet a number of obligations that personally I doubted that we may even be able to reach this year, you know, as far as our normal allocations of funding. Does anyone have questions on that at all? Okay. That'll bring us then to item number 5, which is discussion and possible action regarding the Wausau Central Wisconsin Convention and Visitors Bureau contract.
Before you get that, I just want to make sure I understand. So we still have active applications that we have not,
Yes.
you know, entertained or taken formal action on yet. So at some point, we need to do that.
Right.
Is that
You
number
had
8?
a number.
And
yes,
can we
and
do that? That's what I wanted to ask,
Yep,
is
that's
can we
our-
revisit that at number 8 later?
Yep, that's
Just to
what we're
make sure
gonna
that
stay
that is
for.
something that we do. Okay,
Yes.
got it. Thank
And
you.
we had more than what are on the 2020 room tax summary form, but these are the only 2 that are left because all of the other events got canceled.
Correct.
So,
Okay.
Okay. Okay. So with that, we do have an item posted for closed session tonight pertaining also to the same situation that exists with the CVB. and our contract with them. That said, before we would enter into any closed session, we also then ask if there are open session discussion items pertaining to this matter. Now, part of our discussion surrounding the CVB contract, I think that has already become public. There's been at least one media report about the things that have taken place. And, we have some serious questions about the compliance with our contract and about revenue collections that took place. That said, certainly our strategy as far as what we will do in that situation, we would want to have that in closed session. But the facts of the matter, we certainly can discuss here if commission members or if finance committee members have questions. You received some information in your packets, some of which was confidential from the city attorney. We'll talk about that in closed session. But also some other information that the majority of is public record. And you'll recall that a number of months ago, the finance director and the mayor and the city attorney discovered that a volume of money had been collected from a number of central Wisconsin communities by the CVB. Upon questioning the provider that issued those payments, that situation was then investigated. And there's a couple of different accounts as to what happened there, but it certainly appears that some felt it was a misunderstanding and others feel that that's virtually impossible. So we certainly can talk about that. We do have the director of the CVB with us this evening. I guess I have a few questions that I would like to talk to him about in open session. So Dick, if you'd like to come up to the podium.
Hold on. May I ask a question before we proceed? I've had my hand up, but
Okay.
you asked for questions.
Okay, as I asked for it of the commission, but if you'd like to make public comment, sir, to this particular item, we'd be able to take your public comment, yes.
Great. Hi, my name is Steve Schinker. I'm a Wausau.
Come up, state your name and address for the record.
My name is Steve Schinker, address 922 Adams Street. I'm a Wausau resident, longtime Marathon County resident as well. I also represent CVB and Sports Authority. I've also reached out to Mary Ann Grote, Attorney Jacobson, the mayor, to try to help resolve the failure to pay per contract that the city of Wausau has done. No response has come back to informally have a discussion. So apologize for the timing, but this is the only way I can seem to get an audience.
Okay.
With that,
Let
my
me stop
question
you
is
right,
on the
let me stop you right now, sir.
My question
We
is
are
on the
not, no,
statute.
stop. I have the floor right now.
Great.
We are not going to adjudicate this matter in open session with you tonight as a commission and a committee. We have legal counsel in progress on this matter. So if you would like to talk to the general terms of the CVB contract and our arrangement with them, that's one thing. But if you would like to delve into the meat of the issues at hand,
Not at
that's
all.
not happening.
Not at all. What I would like to ask is, there was discussion about and all the causes are great, but that's not the issue when it comes to the statute. The statute, the Wisconsin legislature, can we agree the Wisconsin legislature and the room tax statute governs how the room tax money is collected and distributed?
Correct.
So when the statute says that a municipality may appoint a room tax commission, which the city did, the statute says then the room tax commission shall contract with a tourist entity, correct? The tourist entity, the only tourist entity is the CVB, correct?
We are not required to contract with the tourism entity for 100% of our allocations. We have a contract with the CVB. They're currently receiving allocations, and they have been since the contract's inception.
But the only tourist entity contracted by the city of Wausau is the CVB, correct?
The city of Wausau uses the commission and the CVB and its own allocations to promote tourism in the city.
Okay. My question is, the only tourism entity is the CVB per the contract of the City of Wausau and by statute, correct?
Do you have a specific question that you wish to get to? I mean,
Well,
I'm
you're
not
delving-
interested in your gotcha questions, so
Well,
please.
it's not a gotcha question. It's the statutory framework requires, because here's the deal. Okay, here's the deal. The room tax is a privilege that cities may impose. If the City of Wausau does not follow the statutory language, it calls into question whether the hotels even have to pay the room tax. So we should consider that before we go into closed session.
Make your point.
That is my point.
Okay.
Because the hotels may say, we are not required by state statute to pay the room tax.
If you have a specific opinion, finish your comments. The
All of
committee will
the-
take your comments under advisement, but the committee will be in closed
Then my
session to talk
specific
about this.
question would become, all of the good deeds that the tourism promotion and tourism development that follows from tourist entities like the CVB, okay, $5.60 out of every $8 off of that $100 bill goes to the tourism promotion and tourism development. If that ceases, we've got a larger problem here in the city of Wausau. I'm speaking as a citizen. So I would give great caution to taking action out of emotion rather than on the statute. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. The committee's intention is not to make an emotional decision, it's to make a fact-based one, and those facts will be vetted in closed session. We have one more citizen who would like to make public comment, and then I'll call you up, Dick, if you could just wait for 1 second. Resident Ed Gale, if you'd like to come up to the podium, please. State your name and address for the record.
My name is Ed Gale. I live at 404 Weston Avenue, Wausau, Wisconsin, 54403. I know I'm limited to about 3 minutes, and I'll do my best to stay there, but I would like to digress just a little bit because I was part of this group in a different capacity when we made the changes that Mary Ann talked about. It happened in the 2004-2006 timeframe. And what happened was Aaron Baumgart, who was chairman of the Finance Committee, told several of us that he was not going to run in 2006. And Jim Rosenberg, who was a vice chair of that committee, started taking on more and more of a role and getting more and more of the historical document, you know, the stuff that had got Aaron to where he was at over the years. Then, around 2006, Jim Rosenberg put together a package for the council for its consideration that started breaking down how we spent the room tax money differently than what we have been doing. And in that time frame, we did set up some permanent people like Lee Yockey and Grand and some of those folks. And what we did with them at that time was we also said, we're going to cut this much from the project, from the money, and we're going to put it in this pile, and you guys are going to get a piece of this pie. If you want more than that, you got to ask for a specific issue. And the other thing we told them at the time was, if we don't get the same amount of money we've been getting, you don't get, if we told you you're going to get $10,000, and we're used to dividing 100,000, but we only got 60,000, everybody's going to take a smaller piece. And it'll be divided out equally as we had agreed with what they would do, okay? Now, I know there's been some changes, and I appreciate that, and I know that many of you are working very hard. I apologize for not first thanking you, Madam Chairman, for the opportunity to speak, and to all the alderpersons and commission members who are here tonight. Thank you very much for allowing me. You certainly don't have to. I don't know any more about what happened than what's been in the news. But I do know that I cannot ask you strong enough terms as a former member of your council and as a citizen of the city of Wausau for you not to leave the Convention Visitors Bureau. There may be some issues with the contract, and this may be a really good time to sit down and scrub that contract. This may be a really good time to sit down and make sure you scrub all the rules, so everybody's in agreement. But the Convention and Visitors Bureau doesn't just affect the city of Wausau. It affects Village of Maine. It affects the town of Texas. It affects Rothschild, Weston, Schofield, Red Mountain. We're all neighbors. And the stuff that comes in may not be room tax money from Schofield. But what comes in to the county is the sales tax. And there's some other things that come in because people go and purchase things in their communities, in the stores. So that allows businesses to happen. There are a lot of very positive things that I know of since I've lived here for 26 years that the Visitor and Convention Bureau affects for all of us. And it helps us build our community. It helps us attract businesses here in different kinds of ways. So I would ask you, rather than leave the Visitors and Convention Bureau, I would ask you to see if you cannot simply take the contract and scrub it. See what was missed. See what we need to do to bring it up to the new standard to make sure we meet compliance with the laws. That's all I'm asking. And I know when you're done in closed session tonight, whatever decision you make will be right for the city of Wausau. I'm not going to condemn or challenge. You've asked, most of you are older persons, you've asked for the opportunity to serve your community, and you have more information than I have. And you know a little more about the situation than I do. But I would just like you to think about the historical facts that that particular organization affects so many wonderful people. The Grand, Layaki, the YMCA. It affects so many places that I can't remember because I'm not on the council and I'm not dealing with this anymore. But please, take that into consideration. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for allowing me to speak to you. And subject to any questions you might have for me, I will conclude my remarks.
Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
You bet. Okay, now, Mr. Barrett, I guess just some general questions. Obviously, the committee has been provided with a timeline of events that took place here. Obviously, there's been some funding that has been changing hands here, originally received from Expedia. It's certainly not our job to adjudicate the issues that other communities may have with the process that was undertaken here, but the process that was undertaken with regard to revenue that was due the city of Wausau, the question that I have had for you since I read the media report was, obviously, according to the minutes of our meeting in November of 2018, whereby we had made an adjustment to your contract, at that time you had been requesting additional funding above the 37%. You were at the meeting. Obviously, at that point, I believe that you had a clear understanding when we all left the room that any funding beyond 37.5%, the CVB would have to apply for and compete for. That said, what led you to believe that you thought that it would be okay to collect from an entity that owed money to the city of Wausau without any action on our part authorizing such?
Well, first of all, thank you for giving me the time to talk and to get some of this matter cleared up. As you know, the Convention and Visitor Bureau is basically the lifeline for tourism in the area. And I want to, it's basically from all the efforts of everybody in this room and the community. Over the past 10 years, we increased room tax by 63%. We've been very successful. We've never had a down year until this year now with the virus. And that's a sad thing to say, but at the same time, with the virus being down, you can't destroy it, the machine that was working before. We went from one event in 2010 to 120 events that we do annually. But it's a coordination effort. And by the way, we never increased our staff. But we have a lot of successes. In 2019, we basically were number 2 in the state for growth and occupancy, and number 6 in state for growth of new dollars generated in tourism in the area. That's from the Wisconsin State report. And that's competing against the Milwaukee, Madison, the Packers, the Bears. They help us anyway when we have a Packer game with them. But you got the Brewers and the professional sport teams plus major universities down in Madison, and you got Lake Geneva and those type of things. And we're hanging right up in there. Now, that's just a little testimonial, but regarding it's called Expedia Collect is the company that basically we assisted. Back in May 12th is when I was made aware of the situation that there's room tax dollars out there that were not delivered. And
So at that point, did you then not pick up the phone?
let me
Okay.
finish, okay? And that's what I found out. We got an email from our Wisconsin Association of Convention and Visitors Bureaus with the number to call if they notice it, because there's going to be an error in the loan. So I made that phone call. Talked to Kevin Wilson at Expedia Collect. He says, thank you for calling, first of all. And he says, yes, we had only 4 out of the 6 communities in our area responded. The one that responded quickest was Rib Mountain. And then Marianne did make contact, but it wasn't finished. He needed to know what hotels are in your city because 54401 includes Rib Mountain. So they didn't have that information. The contacts were made through emails, so the questions weren't answered. If you asked, yeah, he could have called, Marianne could have called, somebody could have called. But anyway, he says, can you help me? I said, more than glad to help you. But I'm going to read one part. And this is based on our contract that we have with you. The room tax delinquencies, which the room tax now is delinquent. The parties agree that they shall...
We're only talking about Expedia.
This is it. The parties agree that they shall work together toward the collection of any delinquent room tax owed to the city, and the parties shall cooperate with the city to assist in the collection of any delinquent or deficient amounts owed by any operator required to collect and remit room tax proceeds under the city ordinance. That is what I followed. We are contracted to do it with you, and that's what we've done.
Here's the question that then comes to my mind. There was no collaborating. There was no telephone call made by you to Mary Ann, and you know very well that Mary Ann keeps the money around here, and she has for decades. So there was no call by you to say, hey, Mary Ann, guess what? You might have some room tax coming your way that you've not collected. There was no such call. There was no collaboration. There was no outreach to the city to say, city, heads up, you may have money coming. We would have collected it ourselves, or there was no outreach to say, city, would you like me to do this for you? And we would have at least had the option to say yes or no. And so that
The
to me
outreach
is
goes
a
both
critical
ways. There was
failure.
nothing either way, number one. Number two is that all I did was basically furnish the information to Expedia Collect, meaning the list of the hotels in Wausau, so we could get the ball rolling. Number two is I gave him also a list of every contact for all our municipalities, who the contact was, the email address and phone numbers. So now we had him to be able to get it submitted. He in turn sent us the check. I thought those checks were going to be written to the city, not to me. I shouldn't say not me, but to the Convention and Visitors Bureau. We took care of it, and every penny was delivered, hand-delivered by me with an explanation of what happened. We assisted in getting those dollars to you, and you received every single penny. And to drag my name and the Convention and Visitors Bureau name through the mud was uncalled for.
The Visitors Bureau's credibility has been damaged by this, no question. And our trust in that entity has been shaken by this. So don't accuse us of dragging anyone through the mud. When you were providing information to Expedia Collect, you were also perfectly aware that Mary Ann Grote collects the money in this city, and you certainly could have provided that person her contact information. You also apparently led somebody at Expedia Collect to believe that you were authorized on behalf of all these communities to take this money.
Let me
And
clear
that-
that up. I did not get authorized by them. They have the right as well. Give you an example, Fox Cities, Brown County, all them, they are delivered to the CVBs for distribution. This is something they do. They have the choice of doing it. Since we're on contract with helping, that is how it actually goes. But what we did is help. We did not try to hinder.
The media reports clearly stated that we read,
Who talked to them?
based on the police report, says that you collected revenue for communities that you don't even have contracts with.
According to the police report, it says there was a lack of communications on both sides.
We won't discuss the merits of the police reports in open session then.
And it's also closed, so you know that.
Okay. I just had a question, and we'll go back to my core question. If our contract says that we'll collaborate to collect money together, why was there no collaboration? Why was there no outreach with us, outreach to the city to verify that we would or wouldn't authorize you to act on our behalf?
Same question goes to you. Why didn't you contact me and know that they knew right away?
We didn't collect your money.
No, huh?
You collected our revenue.
We collected the revenue together according to the contract.
Okay.
And I was glad to be able to assist every single community. I even have a thank you from the city of Schofield, because that was during the time with the elections were taking place, and the virus, everybody's running kind of shorthanded. So someone took the initiative.
We'll just, I guess I have no additional questions. I will just,
Does anybody else have any questions? I'm more
commission
glad-
members or committee members, any questions for Mr. Barrett? I mean, it's safe to say there's not a thank you note coming from us, so we have lots to talk about.
Well, thank you very much for your time, though.
Okay,
Appreciate it
Thank you
very
for
much.
coming. With that, we have a number of things surrounding this matter that we need to discuss in closed session. Could I get a member of the Finance Committee to read the closed session language in number 6 and make a closed session motion? Mr. Martins, go ahead, thank you.
Excuse me. I make a motion that we go into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin Statute 19.85, sub 1, sub G, for the purpose of conferring with legal counsel for the rendering of oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted by the body with respect to litigation in which it is likely to become involved, specifically regarding the contract for services with the Wausau Central Wisconsin Convention and Visitors Bureau.
Okay, we have a motion by Martins. Is there a second for closed session? Second by Herbst. We'll do a roll call vote. Martins?
Aye.
Ryan?
Aye.
Watson? Herbst? I'll vote aye as well.
All right, and if my understanding is correct, we from the Room Tax Commission need a motion to replicate the action of the Finance Committee to go to closed session. Is that correct?
Yep.
A motion from Mr. Neal. Do we have a second?
Well, I guess I have to read it. Is
You
that-
you don't, you can make the same
Okay.
motion as Finance.
I would make the same motion on behalf of the commission.
Okay. And a second from Mr. Bandiat? Any further discussion?
We'll roll call vote then.
Roll call vote. Mr. Martins? Madam Rasmussen?
Aye.
Mr. Neal? Mr. Bandiat? And I will vote aye also.
Okay. So with that, we are going to do our closed session a little differently. Normally, we adjourn to the Maple Room. However, tonight with the WebEx, we are going to conduct our closed session in this room. So members of the community who are not on the committee would be asked to vacate the council chambers. You'll be welcome to wait in the City Hall lobby. And we'll then conduct our discussion here. And when we go back to open session, we'll send someone out to the lobby to announce that we're back in open. And anyone who is waiting then to rejoin us can come back in. And then we'll also then